Humans nowadays live in different geographical areas. Each geography has its own unique characteristics and lifestyle due to its specific location. When talking about the Arabian Peninsula or Arab countries, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? I'm sure for many of you, it includes things related to the Islamic religion, oil and gas reserves, or their luxurious and extravagant lifestyle, as many people imagine that all the countries in the Arabian Peninsula live in prosperity and comfort. However, the situation is not completely like that, because in the southernmost part of this geography, there is a country called Yemen, which many countries do not even recognize. Yemen, which is the second largest country in this peninsula after Saudi Arabia, is always referred to as the poorest country in the Middle East. This country has no resemblance to the other oil-rich countries in this peninsula, and unlike its Arab brothers, it lacks abundant wealth. If you are asked why, while in the neighboring Arab and Muslim countries, people live in prosperity and comfort, this country is mired in poverty, war, and chaos. Join us to find the answer to these questions. Yemen is located in southwestern Asia and at the southern end of the Arabian Peninsula. The country shares borders with Oman to the east and Saudi Arabia to the north. Yemen is located at the entrance of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which is one of the busiest and most strategic maritime transportation routes in the world, highlighting the strategic position of this country. Yemen has an area of 528,000 square kilometers and a population of 33 million people, which is quite large compared to its area. The official language of this country is Arabic, and 99% of its population are Muslims. Like other countries in the region, Yemen owns abundant oil resources, but due to unfavorable conditions, it cannot take advantage of these resources. This country has beautiful islands and a long coastline, and it has the potential to have a thriving tourism industry. Unfortunately, due to internal conflicts, it is not even possible to find an airline ticket to enter this country. Today, more than 80% of the country's population depend on international aid to sustain their lives. Until the 19th century, Yemen was part of the Ottoman Empire. With the weakening of the Ottoman government, the British, who had come to these regions, encouraged the people of Yemen to separate from the Ottoman Empire. After World War I and the treaties that were signed, Yemen was no longer part of the Ottoman government, but the British retained control over the port of Aden and the vast lands around the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the entire southern coast. After the rise in popularity of Arab nationalism, the residents of southern Yemen also decided to fight for their independence, and in 1967 they managed to achieve independence. In 1991, South Yemen merged with North Yemen. In Yemen, dissatisfaction with government corruption was hard more than anything else. A mafia-like government that prolonged its rule through bribery and keeping tribal leaders satisfied. Ultimately, the country was engulfed in internal conflicts and the government collapsed. After this period, unrest and conflict did not come to an end in Yemen, and the people could not unite. From here, the sectarian division between the northern Shiites and the majority Sunni of the country became evident and apparently began a religiously rooted war. The Houthis, as a Shia group, are the strongest in these northern and northeastern spheres and control the capital, Sana'a, and the largest city in the country. Due to these differences, many governments now intervene in the internal affairs of this country, and achieving stability and peace for its people has become an impossible task. If you intend to travel to this country, I must tell you that there are no flights to Yemen, and you must first enter the nearest country to Yemen, which is Oman. The city of Salalah in Oman is the closest city to Yemen, and from there you have to travel 130 kilometers to reach the border of the country. At the border, Omani officials will ask for the reason for your trip to Yemen and inform you that traveling to this country is very dangerous. After this inspection, you will enter Yemen and there will be no issues there, because security at the borders is not established and no one will approach you. In Yemen, you can only visit cities in the eastern part of the country, and you need permission to enter the western regions. When you enter from the east, the first thing that catches your eye is the ancient clay buildings. The path you are taking and its surrounding space takes you back decades, as if time has stood still and nothing has changed in this country. When you move away from the coasts and get closer to residential areas, you can observe many shops and paper currency vehicles along the roads. The roads and their surroundings are dusty, and the signs on the buildings are old and worn out. If you want to have a meal somewhere, you will notice that most people eat with their hands and always drink tea alongside their food. Their cuisine is heavily spiced and somewhat tangy, mainly relying on camel meat. Camels are one of the main sources of meat in this country. The surrounding shops usually have dilapidated entrances, indicating that people are struggling to make a living in difficult conditions. If you are concerned about environmental health, you might go hungry here. Although there are essential products in the shops, people do not have sufficient purchasing power due to inflation. Even some of them earn as little as $30 a month, while the average income of these people is around $100. Since the Yemeni rial is not stable, some professionals, such as teachers and doctors, receive their income in dollars. For a good doctor, it is around $200. However, even these incomes are not sufficient to meet the basic needs of life. Women in this country generally do not work, and all living expenses are shouldered by the male head of the family. Men are mostly engaged in selling food items, spices, perfumes, and jewelry at the market, but due to the unfavorable economic conditions of the country, they have few customers. The country is in such a dire situation that they cannot even utilize their own oil resources, and they import the required gasoline from countries like Oman. Political figures either cannot do anything or are involved in financial corruption. Poverty and unemployment have led everyone to focus only on themselves, and you can see people on the streets carrying guns and knives. When you enter the narrow streets of Yemen, you feel that the buildings could collapse at any moment, since many of them have exceeded their lifespan. Another issue that draws your attention is that most people are around 40 or 50 years old, and there are not many young people in the city. Their clothing style is similar to many Arabic countries, where men wear long clothes and women wear black veils. This is a male-dominated society, and you do not see many women in the community. In some areas, women have a peculiar covering similar to sorceresses, possibly using these special hats to protect themselves from sunlight. In Yemen, the streets have turned into garbage dumps. Wherever you go in the country, you can see a lot of trash in the cities, which in itself indicates the poor infrastructure and management of the country. The civil war in Yemen has led to famine for 17 million Yemenis. Apart from that, the only common language in this country is Arabic. And in urban areas, you only see writings in this language. If you are not familiar with the Arabic language, you will face difficulties here. There is no public transportation system, and you don't see any buses for commuting. People generally use privati vehicles, which are also in poor condition. As a guest, when you enter any house, the male head of the family talks about their difficult living conditions and livelihood problems. However, despite all of these, you can see many children in these houses, which makes the educational and upbringing conditions of these children even more difficult. Many children in this country cannot attend school, do not have access to modern technology, and their only entertainment is playing in the streets. In areas without access to water supply networks, these children are responsible for supplying water to the houses. Despite all these difficulties, the Yemeni people still have hope for the future of their country, and according to them, their country will overcome these crises in the next few years. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure